We'd like to go on with our second guy on the panel right now, who is Mr. Thomas Dehling. I have to read this because it's not really easy. He's working for the Federal Maritime and Hydrographic Agency, which most of the people over here know better than as the BSH, BSH-Bundesamt für Seeschifffahrt und Hydrographie. Over there, he is the director of nautical hydrographic he is the director of the nautical hydrographic department. That's correct, isn't it?
Yes.
Good, perfect. Let me tell you a bit more. He's over there. He's working for more than 24 years right now. This is what LinkedIn was telling me. He's a captain at the Federal Armed Forces, correct? But land-based, not sea-based. So you know chili con carne better than fish and chips, right? And he is chairman of the International Hydrographic Organization, as well as chairman of the German Hydrographic Organization. And he is also lecturer at the Hafen City University, which is just right around the corner. Okay. So it's your stage, and you are going forward to tell us more about dynamic hydrographic information.
Yes, looking for the presentation, the correct one.
Ah, yeah.
If you like, you can use 9.
Just to correct, I'm not the chair of the International Hydrographic Organization. I'm the chairman of the Inter-Regional Coordination Committee of the IHO, which is one of the committees. My predecessor, Matthias Jonas, he's the Secretary General of the IHO. Okay, thank you very much. I'm delighted to give a presentation to you on dynamic hydrographic information provided by a hydrographic office. My department is internationally as one of the hydrographic officers, sort of on the German National Hydrographer. And I would like to give a short introduction with hydrography, digitalization, what we understand it as a hydrographic office, and then have a closer look on the dynamic data that we are working on, a bit about S100. We mentioned this this morning as well, to give you a view on some of the projects that we are currently dealing or have been accomplished currently, and finally, the availability of the data. When we talk about hydrography, as a hydrographic office, of course, we are dealing a lot with that topic, but for many others, even for those in the maritime sector, it's something a bit strange or unknown. But if you look at the information, and I stopped to explain what hydrography is, but rather try to explain why is it so important. And my statement is you can't do nearly anything at sea. No sailing, no construction, no environmental protection without having the hydrographic information. The hydrographic office, of course, is providing only a part of the whole hydrographic information, but quite central. And in that field, the demands are growing not only recently, but faster and faster. And you see, well, of course, everyone wants to have higher accuracy of the data, especially depth information, the reliability of the data at the same time, the up-to-dateness, data resolution as high as possible, 100% coverage, of course, a good visualization. And we have to do these surveys multi-purpose, so for very different kinds of people, and still have to find all the objects that are on the seafloor, of course. And when it comes to that, it's of course sometimes contradictory. If I do surveys, for example, for a mariner, for the navigational charts or ENCs, we need to have a high accuracy on an absolute level. If I do this for hydraulic engineers, they want to have relative accuracy as high as possible, to know the small ripples on the seafloor, because this is important for modeling streams and tidal regimes and so on. They are not that much interested in an absolute accuracy. But they want to have it measured for the whole area they are interested in, literally at the same time. And then it's not necessary to have it refreshed every week, every month, or every year. And this is just to show you how the different needs have to be put under one umbrella of doing surveys and provide information. When we talk about digitalization, I would like to differ this from the digitizing, like the former speech was also about digitalization of a certain product, and digitizing would be just to have a PDF made out of a logbook. But of course, we're talking about digital data flow, also the networking, improved networking of these data, not just having a lot of digital files that don't communicate. The interaction, not only the data has to be interlinked, but also the machines are connected nowadays and talk about their data amongst themselves as Internet of Things. And I see a lot of work to be done for our hydrographic data to be used with augmented reality or virtual reality. So finally, the characteristics of a digital transformation: you have a comprehensive digital accessibility of the real actuality, which is quite demanding, of course, the further you go in that realm. A growing availability of the data, and this on a low level, easy to get, for gathering of the data and for processing the data and providing products out of it. And if we have a closer look at the dynamic data of a hydrographic office, I sometimes call it a dynamic nautical charts. And I know to use the word chart, it might not be really equivalent to electronic information, but it's something that I think it's a good picture to see what we are doing with such a thing. It's just a flat, if you look at the paper chart, just a flat paper. And what we're doing, not only with ENC, but with the future of digital data, nautical data, is that we disaggregate this and use, not only put more information in it, but also to use it, the parts of it, where it is needed, and decide what is needed and what not. In an ENC, which is, well, of course, currently a standard with S57, you have still usually one screen or several screens where you see this information. But in the future, I think we will have different ways of using augmented reality as well, to use the bridge windows, to use to integrate highly dynamic information, which is, for example, depth information, but not only. A nautical chart is a dynamic publication because it has to be updated quite often if you compare it to land, to topographic charts. But when we talk about highly dynamic hydrographic information, you talk about a much more frequent update of much more data and a lot of big data in that field. So the question is how to select that data that you really want to have on the bridge and what can be done in a back-off bridge or really pre-processed somewhere else. This is something that is not really related only to a hydrographic office, but we as a hydrographic office have to provide that information to those that are providing services for the customers. So what does this mean for a hydrographic office? Sometimes one might say, well, dynamic and governmental agency are somehow contradictory because we're not that quick and changing, but I think this has changed quite a lot in recent years, and we are trying to be proactive in what can be the situation in the following years and what do we have to do, what kind of hydrographic information will be needed in the future and with what is the quality of that. And we do this already, and we will do a lot more in the processing and the provision of highly dynamic data. We're providing, for example, bathymetric ENCs in German waters, several parts of, at least at the coast. When we are part of the development of standards within the IHO to develop new services and to tailor the information for the users, who is going to need which kind of information, for example, the depth information, in what quality, and to provide the data efficiently. And, for example, the BENC service to be provided on a daily basis, 24 hours. And to ensure, and this is quite important, and thank you for the opening address this morning, to mention the quality management, to ensure the quality and the safety of that. Well, S100, I know that some are well acquainted to S100, some are not that much, so I have to mention it very shortly, because this will do a big deal of these changes in the future and ease some of these aspects. But of course, we are still on the way to that. That's not all depending on us. And when I come back to the question in the morning sessions, not all have been here, but the question, why isn't S100 ready yet? It is always a question of having the work being accomplished by hydrographic officers together in the International Hydrographic Organization is, of course, quite demanding, but in the end, we need to have a cooperation with all the other players. We have stakeholders with us there, but it's always a question of when, how detailed can we do our work and what has to be done by the IMO, by other organizations, and by the service providers and the hardware manufacturers. So there is a transition phase from S57 to S101, and while there are no, don't take a too close look at the dates because they are a bit unclear, and Tom Meller has given time prospection for this century. And I don't want to talk about dual fuel, but there is a transition phase. And we, as a hydrographic office, will have to provide S57 as long as there are users, ECDIS systems on the market with S57, at least for a decade. And we will have to provide S101. And of course, with our limited resources, we cannot have 2 procession chains for that. So our need is to do this at the first stage without an interruption of doing this transition. So we cannot stop and say, now we need a year to change our production system. We have to do this without any interruption to provide the data. And our aim is, of course, to produce as soon as possible S101 and to have a conversion of the data down to S57. This is of course, much better than the other way around. Just to have the possibility of all the additional features of S100. And this is, of course, is a question of having such a software working, and to provide additionally the other products like the S102, especially just to main those, S102 bathymetry, S104 water level, and S111 surface currents, but also S124 for notice mariners. Sorry. And to develop a distribution chain with that. This is cannot be done by ourselves, but together with the regional ENC center, the rank like ICNC or POMA. And the problem, sorry, a bit early, but no problem with the picture. The question is, you have to have a hardware for that. You have to have a software for for S100, and you need to have data. And all these 3 components are provided by different players on the market. So the question is, who is beginning? If we could start to produce S100 products, data, but if there's no software, this doesn't make sense. And even more, if there's no active system on board of the vessels. So the question always is, who is the first one to do this? And the best thing is, and that would speed up the process even more, if we could start and testing this together and start and don't have these hen and egg problem in that field. So now to a few projects that or that we did at the BSH together with different partners, and one is 7 Seas, and together with SMI Consult, the project EMONAV, where we worked on the integration of the standard ENC information directly with the information from the S104 and S111. And the testbed was the River Elbe. You can see it if you just look outside of the window, to have up-to-date water level information on the bridge, but not only the current information, but also that water level information that is, let's say, 1 or 2 hours ahead. So so you can predict the water level information for your journey, and this goes as well for the currents. So you have model information about, and this in high accuracy and a high resolution. This is up to date on the bridge, and also high resolution test information that is being integrated into S102. So all these 3 components were provided in the test. It's not operational, it has been a project, but I think this is something for the future to be implemented. Another example is a high definition height system in the Baltic Sea. One might ask, why is that important for shipping? We have in the Baltic the Baltic is really an excellent example for good cooperation in the marine sector. We have a harmonized resurvey scheme, so all the surveys in the Baltic are being coordinated and harmonized. And we also did gravimetric measurements. So to have the information, and accurate information about the equipotential surface, which is the height surface. Well, again, you might ask, is it really important? But this leads to a really high definition height system. And now there's in place the Baltic Sea Chart Datum 2000 in almost all of the Baltic Sea neighboring states. And this is really a big step forward to get a high accuracy in your depth information. And this means that you can work with less under keel clearance if you have a high accuracy, not only high accurate surveys, but also a high accurate definition of your heights or depth. And this is not only improving because you can have a less under keel clearance, but you can also use it to find the route with a minimum under shallow water effect, so you can reduce emissions, you can reduce fuel consumption, and those be more economic and environmental friendly with your travel management. Another project which really starting next month is MARTA. It's a mobile, sorry, I didn't translate this. It's a mobile augmented reality diver assisting system for underwater investigations, so inspections, for example, wreck search investigations with a diver. In the North Sea here, you have literally no visibility if you are down there with your diver. And you don't have much time due to the currents, so you need to be quick. And this project is about to assist the diver with the augmented reality projected directly to the diver's head-up display to virtually see the object in front of him. If he's inspecting a wreck, he usually uses his fingers and to feel where the object is, where is the least depth. But with that system, assisted with sonar and optical information if possible, but mainly sonar if in this poor visibility, to get to process this information and provide the information about the objects in his head-up display. Sorry, this moved already forward. Finally, to the availability of the data. Of course, it's one thing to do these highly accurate data acquisition and gathering of the data, but it's also the question of there is data available, but it's there, but the availability of it is poor. We have one project of the BSH with Carnival Maritime. To use the depth information of their cruise ships when they are traveling regularly on certain routes. We have a highly repeated surveys. Well, it's of course with low accuracy, but because of these frequent repeating of it, it is quite interesting to use it, not directly as to put it into a nautical chart, but to use it for improved planning of our resurveys and to improve the work of our vessels, to go there where there probably are changes detected by those vessels and do the resurveys quicker and more better planned, and so a better use of our resources. The JEPCO initiative with the Nippon Foundation JEPCO Seabed 2030 project is also another thing of getting more information, but this is more to the deep areas, not so much to those where the depths are interesting for navigation. But this is one thing to get all the data, but the other thing is to make it available. And this is the question for not so much for solars, but more for non-solars or for even non-navigational purposes. Marine spatial data infrastructure is in place, but there are improvements to put more open data in it. And this means that we have to provide sufficient information that is freely available. But I see that the ENC data and those for the solar market are still not under open data. And the WENT 100 principles is the final thing that I would like to mention, and this is that we have just recently adopted the new WENT 100, the WENT principles extended to the S100 world, which means the regulations of the hydrographic offices how to distribute our data in the S100 world. So finally, all players in the realm of hydrography have different roles, as I mentioned earlier, and our success depends on the cooperation amongst us and with other players in this field. And really interesting developments are ongoing, and I'm looking forward to the joint work and further achievements within our profession. And I thank you for your listening to my speech, and if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Thank you.
Mr. Daly, thank you very much.
Sorry, a bit longer than...
Thank you very much. And thanks to the audience for listening. Of course, we like to ask for questions as well after this presentation. Are there any? Okay. I have to hurry up a bit.
Thank you very much for an excellent presentation, and I was very happy that in the end that crowdsourced bathymetric and data was presented as one of the future things. So I have a question related to that. We know already that there are companies in Norway like Olex. We have the Armada initiative now, which is a massive crowdsourcing sort of initiative to collect data. We have for pleasure craft sonar charts, Fugro doing surveys at very high quality. So when do you believe this data, also crowdsourced, can be used in our charts? Because I think, if you look at S44, the rules for doing surveys, they are quite strict and making it difficult if you want to do high quality charts. But if we look what we have today in our charts, it's very rough data. So do you see a possibility to actually use it, or maybe transfer, also add a layer in S100 so we could also add crowdsourced bathymetric?
Yeah, thank you. Very good question. I'm sure, yes, we can already use crowdsourced bathymetry data in those areas where we have a poor quality in surveying. And I know several examples in the Southwest Pacific where cruise ships have been doing their own surveys in the past to reach certain harbors, remote places, and they didn't share it with others because this is if the other company doesn't have these surveys, I have a stronger place in the market maybe, but this changed. And they provide the data to the hydrographic offices, many of them at least, to put them into poorly charted areas into the nautical chart. The problem is, but this is possible in the new S40 edition of S44, the 6th edition, to inform about the poor quality. In France, they do surveys of that area in these remote places using satellite bathymetry, satellite-derived bathymetry. So from satellite multispectral pictures, you can derive a depth. But this is, let's say, a accuracy of about 5 meters. This is poor, but it's better than nothing. So to protect coral reefs in that areas, it can be very helpful to use that data. So yes, it can be used already. For European waters, and especially for German waters, I can't see the use of crowdsourced bathymetry to be put directly into our charts. But to use it, as I mentioned, to improve our planning.
Thank you very much. Question answered? Yeah? Perfect.
Yes.
Do we have any other questions? Just around the corner. I like you. Thank you.
Yeah, oh, it's loud. I have a question. First, short introduction. I'm Florian. I'm working for 7 Seas, and I'm dealing with routing algorithms. And therefore, I didn't understand your comment about the egg problem between S100 and ECDIS, because this is just one use case. The other use case is what I'm facing every day. Is I try to calculate routes automatically, and the biggest problem we are facing is the limited information of an ENC. So a route passing a depth area of 10 to 20 meters is, for a lot of vessels, unsafe, and the algorithm cannot decide between unsafe and unsafe because the data is too bad. So I think there is, from my perspective, there's not a chicken-egg problem, because we need the data first, because the use case is not only the vessel and the actors, there are several other use cases where we really need to have such data to move forward, and that's a big problem we have. So, and even when we don't have vessels with an ECDIS, they could benefit from the data already when we having them for calculating routes. Just, it's not a question, it's a comment, more or less.
Yeah, but I like to answer it anyway. You're right. What I was mentioning is the S100 or S101 introduction into the reality, and if we talk about high-resolution information or high-definition ENC information, especially the depth that you would be you could benefit from for route planning, then it is a prerequisite, in my view, to have S100 and to have S102 ready to provide you with this information.
Perfect? Yeah. Seems that the question was answered perfectly. Okay. Do we have any other questions here? No? Just a Coke for me? Okay. Any Coke for somebody? I don't like to catch this up. Okay. So no other questions? Okay. Another one.
It's more of a philosophical question, or the open data and the closed data. You mentioned it. Most of the ENC data is proprietary. It's monetized. You have to pay to get access to the data. In the States, most of the nautical charts are made available on a free basis, and I think there is a mismatch between open source, free thinking without getting into the philosophical story, but there is so much data to be collected that I don't think it can be done on a commercial basis. We will need the help from everybody that's on the ocean. I like to call it the blue economy. And I think there should be some guidance, or at least an objective to tell everybody that donates their data will also get access to all the other available data. So this proprietary and open conflict is hindering, I think, the data collection. What's your viewpoint?
Yes, partially. You're right. In my view, when it's when it's about ENC and provision of SOLAS-conform navigational information, I think we will have to stick to at least to this closed and secured information. And it's not the question of whether this is for free, like in the US, or against certain fees. But for all the rest, it is, in my view, at least in Europe, clearly the direction of having this as open data without any fees for that. But even if you want to gather this information, it's still, you have worldwide a lot of hindrance. I had an interesting discussion with the head surveyor from Shell, the company Shell, and they do a lot of prospection and doing surveys in the areas, and they were willing to give their information to the public. But this has to be done via the country where they were surveying for. But they didn't allow it. So even if you want to give your data away, you sometimes have hurdles that you wouldn't expect. And even in Europe, we in Germany give our data away without limitation in the resolution. In Sweden, for example, this is limited to a maximum of 200-meter resolution, which is not usable for navigation, but for scientific work it's interesting. But this is due to security reasons. In Denmark, they don't give data away in a high resolution because of economic interest. So they want to sell the data. So these are also in Europe still hurdles to overcome with that field. But besides ENCs, I see that a governmental agency like a Hydrographic Office has to provide a certain processed information, make it available, and leave it to the market to make as many products that do value-added reselling out of it.
Thank you. Do we have just another question? I have a question as well, but this is coming up later.
No time left.
No. I'm just a guest over here. You have paid.
At the beginning, you gave a nice, provided a nice definition of hydrography. And sometimes we speak on hydrography on sensu largo, sensu stricto. And so my question is, do you think that the content of the water body, like nutrients or temperature or other parameters, turbidity, is this part of hydrography, or do we leave it to oceanography? And the more difficult part is the interface to the bottom, where, of course, we touch geology or geophysics, which is interesting when you are doing pipe laying or things like this, or the liquid mud story, where really is the bottom. So the question, I think the hydrography is much more than just bathymetry. And in the German language, we have two words as Peildienst or Peilung, which means really pure bathymetry, which these vessels show. But I think we are moving to and widen a little bit hydrography in its definition. So what's your opinion on this point? Thank you.
Thank you. So I didn't give a definition in my presentation, but I see, and the German Hydrographic Society, where I'm the chair of, has this view as well, that hydrography is seen in a very broad sense, and sometimes we are in concurrence with oceanography. They claim this is our part. No problem with that. It's just hydrographic field means the whole water column and even the seafloor and all the physical information on it. And this is much more, of course, than bathymetry.
Perfect. Okay. Seems that there will be a room for my question. Within your presentation, you told us a bit about the digitalization processes within your company and your organization. And you have a very nice picture here of the Altair, which is your newest ship. And most of the Germans are really proud about this project, I can tell you. You are delivering data, and you told us that you are going forward with digitalization. Digitalization usually, for me, means to speed up the flow of information. And earlier this morning, in one of the workshops, I have learned that sometimes it takes a long time until the data which you are collecting can be given to your partners to be used within the market. So having a look to your digitalization processes, does it mean that you are able to offer the data faster than before?
Yes, for certain parts at least. So if, depending on let's say, on the needs. We had this discussion in the morning on the event-based provision of information notice to mariners instead of a weekly basis. This, as we already do in my office, that we have a look at all the information that comes in to decide, to prioritize what is really needed on immediate action, what can be done with a new edition, and what has to be done that has to be put into the notice to mariners, or what else has to be done. There's a prioritization already. So depending on the kind of data, it has to be provided faster, like what we do with the BENC. But for some parts of it, if I do a resurvey and there's no significant change that is relevant for mariners, then I don't see the need to put this into that product as soon as possible. So there's always, or has been in the past, the idea if we do digitalization, we can reduce, it will ease the work and reduce the resources that are needed to work in that field. So we learned that we need at least as many people for the work as before, but different ones, more IT experts, for example. And so I have to prioritize what type of data has to be provided as soon as possible. But it's not realistic, for example, there's a vision, if I have the time for that. Maybe you're traveling sailing with a container ship along the River Elbe, and a survey vessel is just a few miles in front of it, surveying that area. And it would be great to have that information on that vessel almost immediately. Yes, with quite some effort to do this, but for all the vessels that have been sailing before that survey vessel, and the survey vessel will not come back in that year, it's of no use. It's not important to have it within 1 hour or one minute or 1 week. So I have to be cautious with the resources I have available as a governmental agency. So I have to think about what service is really necessary or feasible.
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have any other questions? Otherwise, having a look to my watch, I'd like to say we can find 5 more minutes. Otherwise, I think we should bring in a short coffee break.